She said it quietly at first, almost like she didn't want to make a scene. Just a simple warning, the kind most people would brush off without a second thought. Please don't photograph my baby. No anger. No drama. Just a mother holding her child a little closer. But the way her voice tightened at the end made it clear she meant it. The people around her heard the words, but they didn't really listen. And that small moment, that tiny decision to ignore a mother's request, would set off a chain of events no one saw coming. It was a warm afternoon, the kind where everything feels normal and safe. Families filled the park. Laughter floated through the air. Phones were out everywhere, capturing smiles, food, pets, little everyday memories meant for social media. The woman sat on a bench near the path, gently rocking her baby. From the outside, she looked like any other tired but loving mother, lost in her own world. Nothing about her screamed danger or mystery. Yet there was something in the way her eyes kept scanning the crowd, like she was always watching, always alert. Her baby was calm, wrapped snugly in a soft blanket, tiny fingers curling and uncurling. A few people passed by and smiled. One woman leaned over and said how beautiful the baby was. The mother nodded politely, thanked her, and shifted slightly as if to put a little more distance between them. When someone lifted their phone, pointing the camera in their direction, that's when she spoke up. Please, she said, her voice steady but firm. Don't photograph my baby. The person holding the phone laughed it off. Oh, it's just a picture. The baby is adorable. They didn't see the way the mother's face changed. The smile vanished. Her shoulders stiffened. She repeated herself, slower this time as if choosing each word carefully. I'm serious. Don't do it. Around them a few heads turned. Some people felt awkward. Others rolled their eyes. In a world where sharing photos is second nature, her request felt strange, almost rude. Someone muttered that she was overreacting. Another whispered that she must be paranoid. And that's the thing about warnings. They rarely sound urgent enough until it's too late. The phone camera clicked. Just once. A quick snap. The kind that feels harmless in the moment. The person smiled, already lowering their phone, already forgetting about the mother's words. But the mother didn't forget. Her grip tightened around her baby. Her breathing changed. For a second it looked like she might say something more, something louder. Instead, she stood up abruptly and walked away, her steps fast and uneven. People watched her leave, confused but unconcerned. The park returned to normal within seconds. Laughter resumed. Conversations picked back up. The photo, meanwhile, was already being uploaded. A sweet baby note. A heart emoji. A caption about a random cute moment. No names. No location. Nothing that seemed dangerous. But the mother knew better. She had spent months being careful. No photos. No public posts. No digital trail. She had changed routines, avoided familiar places, trusted no one. All of it for one reason, to keep her baby invisible. Safe. Protected from eyes that didn't need to see. And now, because someone wanted a picture, that invisible line had been crossed. That night, the mother barely slept. Every sound felt louder. Every light outside the window felt wrong. She checked the locks again and again. She watched her baby breathe, memorizing the rise and fall of their chest. In her mind, the image of that phone camera replayed over and over. She wondered how many people would see the photo. Who would share it? Where it might end up. She knew how fast things spread online. Too fast to stop once they started. Across town, notifications began to ping. Likes, comments, shares. People admired the baby's face, unaware of the fear tied to that image. One comment stood out. Just a few words. Vague. Easy to miss. But to the mother, if she ever saw it, it would feel like ice in her veins. The next morning, she noticed something different. A car parked across the street that hadn't been there before. The feeling of being watched returned, stronger this time. At the grocery store, someone lingered too long in the same aisle. At the cafe, a stranger glanced at her baby, then quickly looked away. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe it was exhaustion playing tricks on her. But deep down she felt it. The warning signs she had learned to trust were lighting up again. She replayed the moment in the park, wishing she had done more. Wishing she had shouted. Wishing she had left sooner. People always say, if only she listened. But the truth is she did listen. She was the only one who did. She knew the risk. She knew what that photograph could unlock. The problem was that no one else believed her warning mattered. As the day went on, her phone buzzed with an unknown number. No message. Just a missed call. Then another. She didn't answer. She couldn't. Her heart pounded as she pulled her baby closer, whispering soft words meant to soothe them both. Outside, the world looked the same. But for her, everything had shifted. Somewhere, someone was looking at that photo again. Zooming in. Recognizing something they weren't supposed to see. And as the mother stood by the window that evening, watching the street grow dark, she realized the thing she feared most was no longer a possibility. It had already begun. The mother tried to tell herself she was imagining things. Fear has a way of growing when you feed it too much attention. She moved through her small apartment slowly, keeping the lights low, listening to the familiar sounds of her home. The hum of the refrigerator. The soft tick of the clock. Her baby slept in her arms, warm and peaceful, unaware of the storm forming around them. That innocence was the reason she kept going, the reason she stayed alert even when her body begged for rest. Her name was Mara, though very few people knew it anymore. Names had power, and she had learned long ago to keep hers quiet. Before the baby, before the warnings, she had lived a life that felt normal enough. She had trusted easily. Shared photos. Believed that privacy was something only paranoid people worried about. All of that changed the day she realized how closely she was being watched. It started months before the baby was born. Strange messages. Emails with no sender. A photo of her taken from across the street, sent with no explanation. At first she thought it was a mistake, some wrong number. But the messages kept coming, always vague, always just enough to let her know someone out there knew where she was. When she tried to get help, she was told there was nothing concrete. No threat. No crime. Just discomfort. Then she disappeared from her own life. She deleted accounts. Changed her phone number. Moved without telling anyone where she was going. When her baby arrived, she made a promise that this tiny life would not grow up under the same shadow. No photos online. No strangers touching or filming. No casual sharing. The world didn't need access to her child. That's why the moment in the park cut so deeply. It wasn't just about a photograph. It was about control being taken away in a single careless click. Mara checked her phone again. Still no messages. But the missed calls lingered like a bruise. She didn't block the number. Part of her needed to know if it would ring again. Outside, the parked car was gone, but that didn't bring comfort. Whoever was watching wouldn't be obvious now. They never were. Later that day, she ventured out again, forcing herself to stick to routine. Fear thrives on isolation, she reminded herself. She adjusted the baby carrier and kept her head down as she walked. Every reflection in every window felt like a pair of eyes. She noticed how often people raised their phones without thinking, cameras always ready. Each time her heart jumped. At a small shop near the corner, the cashier smiled at her baby. "Such a sweet face," she said. Mara nodded, polite but distant. She noticed the cashier glance at her phone, then back at the baby as if comparing something. It was probably nothing. Probably. But Mara paid quickly and left, her hands shaking just enough to give her away. Back home, she locked the door and leaned against it, breathing hard. The baby stirred but didn't wake. Mara whispered apologies, though she wasn't sure for what. For bringing them into this world? For not being able to protect them from everything? She had done her best. She was still trying. That night, she opened her laptop for the first time in weeks. She searched carefully, using old habits meant to avoid tracking. It didn't take long to find the photo. There it was, posted publicly, already shared more times than she could count. The baby's face was clear. Too clear. Her chest tightened as she scrolled through the comments. Most were harmless. Compliments. Smiling emojis. But one comment, buried deep, made her stomach drop. Didn't expect to see this. No explanation. No follow-up. Just that sentence. Mara closed the laptop, her mind racing. It confirmed what she feared most. Someone who wasn't supposed to know had seen the image. Someone who recognized something. Maybe the baby. Maybe her. Maybe both. Her phone buzzed again. Unknown number. This time a message appeared. "I told you photos have consequences." Her hands went cold. She stared at the screen, her pulse roaring in her ears. The message vanished before she could respond, as if it had never been sent. No number. No trace. Just proof that the warning she had given in the park wasn't paranoia. It was experience. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She simply sat there, rocking her baby, her mind slipping into survival mode. Every move from now on had to be careful. Calculated. She began packing a small bag. Essentials only. Documents. Formula. Clothes. The things you grab when you're not sure when you'll be back. As she worked, memories surfaced. The first warning she ever ignored. The first time she thought she was safe. She wondered if the person who took the photo would ever understand what they had done. Probably not. To them it was just content. A moment. Something to scroll past. They would never know the weight of it. Outside, footsteps echoed in the hallway. Mara froze. The steps paused near her door, then moved on. She waited a long time before breathing again. This was how it felt now. Every sound carried meaning. Every silence felt loud. She checked the time. Too late to leave unnoticed. She would wait until morning. One more night. She placed the baby in the crib and sat beside it, watching. The rise and fall of that tiny chest anchored her to the present. Whatever happened next, she would face it awake. Somewhere, far from her quiet apartment, someone was scrolling through their phone again. The photo still lived online, untouched, impossible to pull back completely. It had already traveled farther than Mara could track. Screenshots, downloads, shares and private messages she would never see. The warning had been given. The line had been crossed. As dawn crept closer and the sky began to lighten, Mara felt a heavy certainty settle in her chest. The past she ran from was no longer behind her. It had found a way back in, through a single photograph, taken by someone who never thought twice. And whatever was coming next was already moving closer. Morning didn't bring relief. It never did anymore. The light creeping through the curtains only made everything feel more exposed. Mara moved quietly, packing the last few items while her baby slept. She kept checking the door, the window, the phone. No new messages. No calls. That silence was almost worse. It felt like being watched without seeing the eyes. She decided to leave the apartment for a while. Staying still made her feel like a target. She wrapped her baby carefully and stepped outside, locking the door behind her. The hallway was empty, but the echo of her footsteps felt louder than it should have. Every neighbor suddenly felt like a stranger, every sound like a question. On the street, the city moved as it always had. Cars passed. People laughed. Life continued, completely unaware of the fear walking among it. Mara blended into the crowd, just another mother with a baby, and that was exactly what terrified her. It was too easy to disappear. Too easy for someone else to follow without being noticed. She headed toward a small cafe she used to visit before everything changed. It wasn't part of her routine anymore, which made it feel safer, at least in theory. Inside, the smell of coffee wrapped around her, warm and familiar. She chose a seat near the back, facing the door. Old habits never really leave. A few tables away, two people were quietly talking about social media trends. One mentioned how fast photos spread now, how nothing really disappears. Mara's stomach tightened. She looked down at her baby, brushing a finger over their cheek, grounding herself in the moment. Across the room, a man glanced in her direction. Just once. Then again. He looked away quickly, pretending to check his phone. Mara told herself not to jump to conclusions. People look. Babies attract attention. That didn't mean anything. Still, when she finished her drink, she left without looking back. Outside, her phone buzzed again. This time, a notification from a private message app she hadn't used in months. The account name meant nothing to her. No profile photo. Just a short message. You should have stayed invisible. Her chest tightened as if the air had been pulled away. She typed a response, then erased it. Anything she said could be used. She slipped the phone into her pocket and kept walking, her pace steady even as panic pressed against her ribs. A few blocks away, another story was unfolding. The person who took the photograph sat on their couch, scrolling through comments. At first, the attention felt good. Likes always do. But the strange messages had started to creep in. Questions they couldn't answer. Someone asking where the photo was taken. Someone else asking if they knew the mother. That's when the excitement faded into discomfort. They remembered the woman's face now. The fear in her eyes. The way she had warned them. It hadn't felt serious then. It does now. They tried deleting the photo, but it was already too late. Copies existed everywhere. Screenshots don't disappear when posts do. They typed an apology message, then stopped. What would they even say? Sorry I didn't listen? Sorry I put your child at risk? They closed the app instead, choosing silence over responsibility. Back on the street, Mara felt the city closing in. She ducked into a small library, one of the few places where phones stayed mostly quiet. The calm helped her breathe again. She found a corner seat and opened a book she had no intention of reading. Her eyes drifted instead, watching reflections in the glass. She wasn't imagining it anymore. A woman stood near the entrance, pretending to browse, glancing over more often than felt normal. When Mara shifted, the woman shifted too. Not close enough to cause a scene. Just close enough to be present. Mara stood up slowly and walked toward a different aisle. The woman didn't follow this time, but that didn't erase the feeling. Someone was testing boundaries. Seeing how aware she was. Seeing what she would do. Her phone vibrated again. Another message. Different account. You can't outrun the internet. That one made her stop cold. The words echoed everything she already knew. Once something is online, it lives its own life. Faces become data. Moments become access points. She had spent so long trying to protect her baby from that reality, and now it was knocking on the door. She left the library through a side exit and took a longer route home, doubling back more than once. No one followed openly, but the absence of confirmation didn't bring peace. It only fed the unknown. At home, she found an envelope slipped under her door. No name. No return address. Her hands shook as she picked it up. Inside was a printed screenshot of the photo from the park. On the back, 3 words were written in neat, careful handwriting. We see you. Mara sank onto the floor, pulling her baby close. This wasn't random. This wasn't a coincidence or a misunderstanding. Someone wanted her to know they were watching. That the warning she gave had been heard by the wrong people. Her mind raced through possibilities. Who knew her past? Who would care enough to follow her now? The answers felt just out of reach, like a memory she couldn't fully grasp. She thought about reaching out for help, then stopped. Help meant exposure. Questions. Records. Digital footprints. Everything she had avoided. She was trapped between being invisible and being safe, and now she was neither. As night fell, the city lights flickered on, one by one. Somewhere, phones glowed in dark rooms. Screens refreshed. The photo still existed, floating through networks she couldn't see, connecting strangers she would never meet. Mara sat awake, listening to the sounds outside her door. Every step in the hallway made her heart jump. Every notification made her flinch. The baby slept peacefully, unaware that their image had become something dangerous. The main conflict was no longer just fear. It was time. How long before watching turned into acting? How long before someone crossed another line? She held her baby tighter, knowing one thing for certain. The warning she gave in the park was only the beginning. The next 2 days blurred together, measured only by naps, feedings, and the constant weight of being watched. Mara barely slept. When she did, her dreams were shallow and sharp, snapping her awake at the smallest sound. She stopped turning on lights at night. She stopped checking her phone unless she had to. Every vibration felt like a threat. The messages didn't come often, but when they did, they were deliberate. Short, calm, confident. Still moving. Still hiding. Each one arrived from a different account, different platform, different name. It was never the same twice. Whoever it was didn't want to be blocked. They wanted to prove something. That they could always reach her. Mara stopped leaving the apartment unless absolutely necessary. She canceled everything. No park. No cafe. No walks unless it was dark and quiet. Even then she felt exposed. She kept the baby close at all times, the carrier becoming an extension of her body. She whispered stories, hummed softly, anything to keep herself grounded. On the 3rd night, she noticed the light across the street flick on and off twice. Just enough to be noticed. She watched from behind the curtain, her heart racing. The window across from hers was dark again, empty. Maybe it was coincidence. Maybe it wasn't. The problem was that everything now lived in that space between. Her phone buzzed again. Do you remember why you ran? That message hurt the most. It wasn't vague. It wasn't random. It knew her past existed for a reason. She sat down slowly, her legs weak. She hadn't told anyone about that time in her life. Not the details. Not the fear. Not the mistake that taught her how quickly attention could turn dangerous. She thought about the photo again. How innocent it looked to everyone else. How easily it fit into the endless scroll. No one looking at it would guess what it had unlocked. That was the scariest part. Danger rarely announces itself clearly. It hides behind normal things. Cute things. Harmless things. Across town, the person who took the photo finally broke their silence. They opened their messages to find dozens of unread requests. Some friendly. Some strange. A few that made their skin crawl. One asked if they could get a higher quality version of the photo. Another asked if the baby had a name. That's when guilt turned into fear. They tried reporting the accounts, but responses were slow and automated. They tried deleting everything connected to the post, but screenshots kept resurfacing. The internet didn't care about regret. It only cared about content. They searched the woman's face, trying to remember more details. The warning. The urgency. The way she left so fast. For the first time, they understood that the story didn't belong to them. And yet, they had become part of it. Back in the apartment, Mara started planning again. Real planning. Routes. Timing. What to take. What to leave behind. She wrote everything down on paper, refusing to trust digital notes. She memorized phone numbers instead of saving them. She moved the baby's crib away from the window. She told herself she just needed one clean exit. One moment where no one was watching. But even that felt impossible now. That evening there was a knock at the door. Mara froze. She didn't move. Didn't breathe. The knock came again, firmer this time. 3 slow taps. Controlled. Whoever was on the other side wasn't in a hurry. Delivery, a voice called. Come. Neutral. Mara stayed silent. She checked the peephole, her hands shaking. The hallway was empty. No person. No package. Just the quiet hum of the building. Her phone buzzed immediately after. You should have answered. Her heart pounded so hard it hurt. This wasn't distant anymore. This wasn't online. This was physical. Close. The line between digital and real had vanished completely. She backed away from the door, clutching her baby. The walls felt thinner now, like they could hear her thoughts. She moved to the bedroom and locked it, even though she knew it wouldn't help much. Locks only keep out people who respect boundaries. The night stretched on, heavy and tense. Every sound outside made her flinch. A door closing. Footsteps. A laugh drifting through the hallway. Each one felt like a test. Near midnight, her phone lit up again. This time it wasn't a message. It was a live notification. Someone was streaming. The thumbnail made her blood run cold. It was the park. The bench. The exact spot where everything started. The video title was vague, harmless to anyone else. But she knew what it meant. Someone was there. Replaying the moment. Claiming it. She didn't open the stream. She didn't need to. The message beneath it said enough. You made this public. Mara sat on the floor, rocking slightly, tears finally slipping free. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just quiet exhaustion. She had warned them. She had tried. Now the consequences were everywhere, spreading faster than she could contain. Outside, a car engine started and idled for a long time before driving away. She watched its headlights fade through the curtain, her chest tight with dread. The climax was coming. She could feel it. The careful watching was turning into something more direct. Something bold. Whoever was behind this wasn't satisfied with distance anymore. As dawn crept in, pale and cold, Mara realized there was no safe waiting left. The next move, whoever made it, would change everything. She looked down at her baby, still asleep, still trusting, and made a silent promise. Whatever was coming, she would face it head on. But the question lingered, sharp and terrifying. Would she be fast enough? Mara didn't wait for the sun to fully rise. She moved while the city was still half asleep, when routines hadn't kicked in and watchers were slower to react. She packed only what she could carry, strapping the baby close to her chest. Every movement felt heavy, like the air itself was pressing down on her. Before leaving, she took one last look at the apartment. It already felt like a place she no longer belonged. She slipped out through the stairwell instead of the elevator, counting steps, listening for echoes. Nothing. No footsteps behind her. No voices. That silence felt staged, like a pause before something snapped shut. Outside, the street was quiet. Too quiet. She walked fast, turning corners without checking her phone. She told herself not to panic, but panic had become part of her breathing. She headed toward the bus station, thinking crowds might help. Thinking movement was safety. Halfway there, her phone buzzed. A new message. No name. You changed exits. Smart. Her legs nearly gave out. This wasn't guesswork. Whoever it was could see her. Right now. She scanned the street, forcing herself not to run. Running would confirm fear. Fear was information. She ducked into a small convenience store and stood near the back, pretending to browse. The clerk barely looked up. Mara watched the reflection in the freezer door. A man entered. Then another. No one stood out. That was the problem. Her phone buzzed again. Not them. Her stomach dropped. They were narrating her choices. Correcting her assumptions. This wasn't one person casually watching from a distance. This was someone invested. Someone who wanted control. She left the store through a side door and changed direction again. Her thoughts raced. This was about the photo. Why escalate now? What had shifted? What had she missed? The answer came faster than she wanted. Her phone lit up with a notification from a news app she didn't remember installing. The headline was vague, easy to ignore for anyone else. Viral photo sparks online debate over privacy and consent. Her hands trembled as she opened it. The article included a cropped version of the photo. The baby's face blurred just enough to claim responsibility, but not enough to erase recognition. Comments filled the screen. Arguments. Opinions. People choosing sides without knowing the cost. And then she saw it. Someone had tagged a location. Not exact. Just close enough. Mara closed the app, her chest burning. This wasn't just one person anymore. The story had turned into a topic. A discussion. A spectacle. The baby wasn't a child to them. It was content. Her phone buzzed again, this time with a voice message. "You see it now," the voice said calmly. Familiar in a way she couldn't place. "This isn't about me. It's bigger than that." She didn't reply. She couldn't. Her throat felt locked. She changed direction again, heading toward an older part of the city, where buildings pressed closer together and cameras were fewer. She remembered a woman she used to know, someone who helped her once before, back when disappearing felt possible. She hadn't spoken to her in years. Trust was a risk, but so was everything else. As she walked, a memory surfaced, sharp and unwanted. The reason she had learned to hide in the first place. The reason she understood attention too well. Back then it had started the same way. A photo. A harmless share. People thinking they were entitled to access just because something was visible. She had escaped once. Barely. Her phone buzzed again. This time the message wasn't threatening. It was apologetic. "I tried to stop it." The name attached made her breath catch. It was the person from the park. The one who took the photo. Another message followed quickly. "I didn't know. They're messaging me too. Asking questions. I think someone's organizing this." Organizing. That word echoed. This wasn't chaos. It was coordinated. The messages. The timing. The way her movements were tracked. Someone was pulling strings and others were being used without realizing it. Before she could respond, her phone rang. A video call request. From an unknown account. She didn't answer. She couldn't risk being seen. Seconds later, a message appeared. "You should pick up. You'll want to hear this." She ducked into an alley, her back against the brick wall, heart pounding. She adjusted the baby, making sure they were still calm, still warm. Then, against every instinct, she accepted the call. The screen filled with a blurred image at first. Then it focused. It was the park again. But this time the camera turned, showing a woman standing near the bench. Someone Mara recognized instantly. Herself. From months ago. Pregnant. Tired. Sitting alone. "This is when it started," the voice said. "You just didn't know yet." The call ended before she could speak. Mara slid down the wall, breath shaking. That footage was private. It wasn't online. It wasn't public. Someone had been watching her long before the baby. Long before the warning. The photo in the park hadn't started this. It had only exposed it. Her phone buzzed one last time. "Meet me if you want it to stop." An address followed. She stared at the screen, torn between terror and anger. This was the second twist she hadn't prepared for. The realization that the threat wasn't random and it wasn't new. It was patient. And it knew her better than she thought. Sirens wailed somewhere in the distance. The city felt closer now, tighter, like walls closing in. Mara stood slowly, her mind racing through possibilities, through traps and chances and consequences. She didn't know if the message was a lie. She didn't know if walking into that meeting would end everything or destroy what little control she had left. But she knew one thing. Staying still was no longer an option. And somewhere, someone was waiting to see what she would do next. Mara didn't go to the address right away. That was the first choice that saved her. Instead, she sat in a quiet doorway 2 blocks away, breathing through the panic, thinking clearly for the first time in days. Whoever was behind this wanted her isolated, reactive, rushed. They wanted her to walk straight into whatever they had planned. She refused to give them that satisfaction. She sent one message back. Just 3 words. "I'm on my way." Then she turned her phone off. The building at the address was old, half abandoned, the kind of place people stopped noticing years ago. Broken windows on the upper floors. Faded signs. A perfect place for secrets. Mara watched it from across the street, heart pounding. No obvious movement. No crowd. No camera she could see from where she stood. She adjusted the baby carrier and crossed the street. Inside, the air smelled like dust and metal. Her footsteps echoed as she climbed the stairs, each step louder than it should have been. The 3rd floor door was slightly open. Light spilled out, harsh and white. She pushed it open with her shoulder. The room was smaller than she expected. Just a table, a laptop, a tripod, and someone standing beside it. It wasn't a stranger. It was a man she recognized instantly. Her brother. The shock hit harder than fear ever had. Her mind scrambled, rejecting what her eyes were seeing. He looked older, thinner, but it was him. The same face she hadn't seen since she cut him out of her life. Since the first time she learned how dangerous attention could be. You shouldn't have posted the baby, he said calmly, like they were discussing weather. Mara's hands shook. You were watching me before that, she said. Before the park. He nodded, almost proud. I had to make sure it was really you. You're good at disappearing. Everything fell into place at once. The old footage. The messages that felt personal. The way this felt rehearsed. It wasn't about the photo alone. The photo was leverage. A trigger. Something he could use to pull her back into the open. You warned them, he continued. I knew you would. You've always tried to control the narrative. Rage burned through her fear. You used my child, she said. Her voice was low, steady. You turned my baby into bait. You didn't deny it. The internet does the work for you, he said. All I did was guide it. She took a step back, protecting the baby without thinking. Why? She asked. After everything. His expression tightened. Because you vanished. Because you took something that was mine too. Because people listen when there's a story. That was the truth of him. Always chasing relevance. Always needing an audience. He had learned, just like she had, how powerful visibility could be. Where she saw danger, he saw opportunity. You could have just stayed quiet, he said. But you had to make a scene in the park. That warning made people curious. Mara understood now. The warning wasn't ignored. It was exploited. The clip of her saying, "Don't photograph my baby," had been edited, shared, framed as drama. A hook. Sympathy bait. He had turned her fear into content. You're done, she said. This ends now. He smiled. It already has. People are watching. She followed his gaze to the laptop screen. A live stream was running. The camera angle showed the room, blurred just enough to hide faces, sharp enough to tell a story. Comments were flooding in. Speculation. Suspense. A countdown. Mara's stomach dropped. You're live. Delayed, he corrected. For safety. She realized then that this was his climax, not hers. He wanted confrontation. Confession. A viral ending. She took a breath and did the one thing he didn't expect. She stepped into the light. She spoke calmly, clearly, holding the baby close. She talked about privacy. About consent. About how a single photo can destroy lives. She talked about warnings and how ignoring them has consequences. She didn't name him. She didn't accuse. She let the truth exist without spectacle. Behind the scenes, something else happened. The person from the park had finally acted. Guilt had outweighed fear. They had turned over everything. Messages. Screenshots. Accounts. And they hadn't done it quietly. Authorities arrived faster than her brother expected. The door burst open mid-sentence. The live stream cut. The room filled with noise, commands, confusion. Her brother backed away, anger flashing across his face as controls slipped through his fingers. He hadn't planned for this. He hadn't thought she would survive long enough to think. Mara didn't resist. She didn't need to. She held her baby and focused on breathing. Hours later, as the sun set again, she sat in a quiet room, wrapped in a blanket, her baby asleep against her chest. Phones buzzed outside the door. News headlines shifted. Accounts went dark. The photo disappeared from major platforms, scrubbed as thoroughly as the internet allows. The main conflict was over. The watching had stopped. The messages were gone. But as she finally allowed herself to exhale, an officer gently placed her phone beside her. There's something you should see, he said. It was a notification. A repost. The photo. From an account not linked to her brother. Different name. Different network. The caption read, "You can't erase everything." Mara stared at the screen, her heart sinking. The final twist wasn't about who started it. It was about what the world had become. The warning had been real. The danger had been stopped. But the truth remained. Once an image is released, it never truly belongs to you again. She turned the phone face down, holding her baby tighter, knowing that this time she would keep fighting. Because listening to the warning was only the beginning. The days that followed were quieter, but not peaceful. Quiet doesn't always mean safe. For Mara, it meant space to finally feel everything she had been holding back. The fear didn't vanish overnight. It softened slowly, like a bruise fading one shade at a time. She stayed in a temporary place arranged by people who understood risk, people who didn't ask her to explain herself twice. The baby slept more soundly there, and that alone felt like a small victory. The investigation moved forward without her needing to push. Her brother's story unraveled quickly once the spotlight turned on him instead of toward him. The live stream never went public again, but fragments of it circulated just long enough to prove intent. The coordinated messages. the planted reactions, the manipulation of strangers who never knew they were being used. It was all there. Not dramatic in the way movies show it, but clear enough to matter. The person from the park reached out again, this time through proper channels. Their apology was long and clumsy and very human. Mara read it once, then put it away. Forgiveness didn't feel urgent. Accountability mattered more. That person learned a hard lesson too, one that would follow them every time they lifted a phone around someone else's child. The reposted photo became the final loose thread. It didn't spread far. Platforms removed it quickly once it was flagged, but its existence lingered in Mara's mind. Proof that even when the main thread is stopped, echoes remain. The internet doesn't forget easily. It just grows bored and moves on. Mara chose not to disappear again. That decision surprised even her. Instead of running, she rebuilt carefully. She worked with people who understood digital safety, learning how to exist without being exposed. She didn't share photos. She didn't post updates. But she also didn't hide in fear anymore. She learned the difference between privacy and silence. One is a boundary. The other is a prison. She gave a statement that was never turned into a headline. She spoke plainly about consent, about how warnings aren't drama, and how parents don't owe the world access to their children. Her words were shared in small spaces, not viral ones. And that was enough. Her brother never tried to contact her again. Some lines, once crossed, erased themselves. She grieved the relationship quietly, for what it once was and what it never could be again. That grief didn't mean regret. It meant closure. The baby grew slowly and beautifully, unaware of the digital storm that once hovered so close. Their first laugh came one early morning when sunlight spilled across the floor. Mara laughed too, the sound surprising her. It felt like reclaiming something she thought she had lost. Life didn't return to how it was before. It couldn't. But it became something steadier, safer. She learned to trust her instincts again, the same ones that had warned her in the park. The same ones people ignored. Sometimes when she passed someone holding up a phone, she felt that old flicker of tension. But she didn't freeze anymore. She spoke up when she needed to. And when she said no, she meant it. The world kept scrolling. New stories replaced old ones. But the lesson stayed with her, sharp and clear. A single photograph can change everything. Not because of what it shows, but because of who sees it, who shares it, and who feels entitled to it. Warnings aren't overreactions. They are boundaries shaped by experience. And ignoring them doesn't make you innocent. It makes you responsible. Mara never forgot that. And as she held her child one quiet evening, watching the city lights blink on one by one, she knew something important had shifted. This time she wasn't just surviving the story. She was finally writing the ending herself.